like a little circle. He's only there because his father's a multimillionaire, you know, and his best friends own El Diario, and they go watch the Laker games, private jets, on a Saturday. You come back, and I'm like their token sort of Chicano experience to them, you know, like he's like, oh, like he's cool, you know, like he's like, you know, because I'm a hipster, or I'm like I travel, or I'm Chicano, or I went to this, all these little things, you know, and I'm none of that, you know, I'm not absolutely none of that. I'm just you know, trying to do my thing, but that's also what they respect me for as well. You know, it's not like they're men and they can ground up to that. So we, you know, it's sort of that whole thing that he tells me too. So why does it have to be about that? How come it couldn't be like about this or that? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Because for one, it's still you know, you got to find, if you want to play ball, you have to find a practical way to play within the stereotypes and the cliches of the industry and how, you know, how it works. And if you I had a girl from El Paso who was a big producer for MGM, and Lindsay Huffle, and she, you know, she's well known, works with Uncle Winfrey, like, oh, you know, I can work with you, I like you, you're articulate, you know, this and this and that. But you got to stop doing stuff like Spike Lee, or trying to be like Martin Scorsese, or trying to do this or that, and you know, be like a Tyler Perry, you know, work on something like that. And I'm not saying that she was offering me anything. I'm just having this is an actual conversation. I'm telling her, and I'm like, I was like, all right, you know, I'm humoring the thing. Like, take me for dinner, and well, maybe I'll try it out. But no, I'm kidding. And so you work with that, and then at the same time, I think, no, there's also an assignment. You know, it's also a niche as to why I get published from a Santa Fe publisher after Nuyorican's. They go under, and then I have to find another publisher. It's because every region's got its niche. You know, Austin's got, you know, South Congress, and keep Austin Weird campaign, and the whole Linklater and Wes Anderson connection, and all those ramifications, and Robin Rodriguez, and all San Antonio, and Quentin, and Sci-Fi, and all this stuff, right? How do you play within niches? And that's just the reality of the way it works. So it was an assignment internally to where, at the same time, how do you not, you know, just completely be full of shit and pretentious and inept and just stupid, and come up with something that's going to do something. How do you make something, as Steven Soderbergh learned from Quentin Tarantino? I had written an article about that. That was fascinating. So how do you make interesting films for the mass media? You know, how do you not dumbify it? You know, so you try to work with something like that. You know, you think, oh, wow, what Chicanismo means to me is an even plateau. You know, to play the game the same way. You know, Aronofsky played the game, or Rodriguez, or Wes Anderson, or Iñárritu, or Scorsese, or Coppola, whomever, you know, whatever name you want to drop, how did they get to that point? And so, and the bottom line was also that I didn't make any of this up. It happened, you know, it happened, you know, I may have little points of, you know, transitional dialogue looking back. I may have, you know, some hyperbole, very little, right? Not very much, but I have some, but it's anchored in truth. Sharp edges. Sharp edges slicing through the desert shrub, opening the sage to a heart-beating path to freedom. The creosote gives life to the hummingbird, the moth. The wind comes into Madre's fingers as she and the black coyote rest in the heat of Chihuahua. Miles away from her past in Juarez, miles away from her future in El Paso. And caught in that empty space, the sun's heat was merciless. Water, enough water, the coyote tells her. The only need when walking through the Chihuahua desert is water. Preparing for the swim, tears merge with sweat, anger evaporates into hope, compelled her to cross the Rio Grande from south to north, and the foundations of a home, the legacy to be, began with this migration move. With that being said, can I have some more water? I have a little more. Thanks. The coyote. The desert willow weeps with my mother as the tears converge into a timeless sweat. The $3,000 coyote guides her across the relentless desert, looks back at her to see how she's doing, how she's holding up. And the sun has no mercy, and it pulls them north through the ether of songs. Songs of their ancestors' souls, leaving benchmarks to the Chihuahuan desert. The sand prickly pear plant bites at my mom's toes. Through her threaded sandals, blood trickles out. She tastes the blood from her thumb. No salt, no acid, no disease, nothing but desert heat. And Manuel points to the purple Apache plum. Look how beautiful, it almost doesn't need water. The plant maintains its beauty with very little water. Mother breathes it in, hoping to inhale its spirit. And they continue traveling north. Mother points out 2 rattlesnakes making love between honey mesquites, bright green feathered deciduous leaves. The rattles rejoicing in the dance. We can do the same, Yolanda. My mom laughs at his slight flirtation and insists to continue north. The New Mexico century plant releases its aroma. Invited needed rest. They sleep underneath the baking afternoon sun, blanketed from the stars. The coyotes and desert dogs bark in unison, waking them from their short sleep, the cascading darkness swallowing the shadows of hills and the mountains that allowed them to circumvent the Border Patrol agents. And they walk guided by the shining voice of La Luna. The scent and intuition of El Coyote shows him the trails. Adrenaline permeates their body spirit as they arrive at the Rio Bravo. Beans with garlic and cilantro were their breakfast. Manuel dove into the river with the playfulness of a young kid. My mother walks in carefully, but soon finds herself swallowed by the water. Be careful with the underwater currents. What? I said, be careful with the currents. My mom continues carefully, but soon finds herself devoured by water and fear. And she doesn't know how to swim. The brown water swirled into her mouth as she spit it out. She tried to breathe. She dog paddled through the water, no longer even hoping to touch or push up from the bottom. I was pulled by the current like a demon lurking inside the river. I told you I was pulled entirely into the river as my mouth was filled with water. Manuel, I'm drowning. Manuel, I'm drowning. And I was being pulled by the current. I swear it felt like the hand was pulling me in. Manuel swam back to my mom. He grabbed her by the hand, pushed her above water, swam under her body, carried her on his back like a boat searching for solid ground. Manuel did not come up from the water. My mom was not able to crawl onto the ground, crying and screaming, Manuel, ¿dónde estás? Where are you? But he did not resurface until a ways down the river, his body floating off into the hills of the desert. The current seduced him under, drowned him, in exchange for saving my mother. So yeah, that's the one, that's a pretty heavy one. All that is true, all that is absolutely true. I just put some of the stories together, but yeah, for the most part. And the thing is that the guy was black. He's a black Juarense of all things, a Mexican. And that was always interesting for me growing up. I'm like, how do they perceive that? Like Chicanos, how do you deal with interracial situations within a non-academic scenario? And in life, how do you deal with that? So that's always an interesting one. And this is about my father. La Rudera. My father's legacy, almost unknown to me. His early death in his mid-30s, killed by La Rudera. The buses in Juarez that were known for murdering people with their reckless driving through the potholed streets. When it rained, they become small lakes and pools where children would bathe. That last night when he was killed, he had finished his journalism work at a local TV station as he threw his guitar in the back seat of the car on his way to play a show at the Kentucky, where it was famed that Hemingway and Kerouac would go for drinks. But God figured it was time to take him with all his Mayan and German ancestors carving their way up north through Argentina on into Guadalajara, into Casas Grandes, where my father was born. And Father whom I've never known, you and your father, and his father, those ancient ones, unite to see me who is them in full form. They teach me how to laugh at the sickness when it overwhelms. Like a Buddha, I roar my laugh into the dark. And you had a son who transcended all dead ends through his path. And your blood lives through his tongue, traveling through your dream into my inspiration. And this one, I don't know, like, you know, part of the thing is to write about the drug war, you know, sort of in Juarez, the way, his name Charles Bowden was writing about when he was writing about Juarez, or the way T.J. English, who gave me a blurb on this, and he's a foremost sort of crime writer. He did the Whitey Bulger thing for the Inquirer, I think. And he's 5-time New York Times best-selling author. He's very renowned and a very good friend of mine. And the reason why he was wearing the Irish Mexican Alliance shirt is our organization. You know, he did this nonprofit where we would raise money. Oh, what he did, I helped him with one event, to send money back to the Juarez, to the Mexican journalists that were being killed as a result of the drug war out there. So the whole thing was to, like, all right, you guys do your thing, but just let the storytellers tell their story, you know, and don't go off killing them. Get them involved in that. So, you know, they write about that, and there, you know, so I've learned about niche and that respect of, but at the same time, I was wanting to maintain integrity at a certain level. And with that being said, I don't know if you remember this guy, Pete, Hugo Juice, the Puerto Rican. Yeah. David Wante tells me that a while back that he was killed. Yeah. Did you know that? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that, you know. And I didn't know him very well, you know, through, we grew up together in the projects. And I know he was a tough guy. He Puerto Rican, Chicano, he knew how to fight pretty well. I don't know if you knew him too, but he was great on the basketball court, you know. He was a really good basketball player. And then, you know, David had some issues with the poem. He's like, oh, you know, I have this head and this, and going very deep. And I'm like, so he was like, he only got like 2 stanzas. I didn't know you knew him. I knew him on the basketball court, you know. I just knew that he was good, and he was somebody that would, you know, want to take on and challenge and be schooled by him at first, but certainly come back and school him right back, you know, and in a way that was really cool. But it was a good friendship. And so when I heard this, I was just struck by it. So it's called Juice. I recall the fro, the long nose, the lisp, the freckles, the moves on the court, the ball crisscrossing to the staccato beat of Tito Puente. Now he lies dead, shot straight through the head, midday drama in Juarez. His breath, I can still feel it sometimes. We both came from the same project, solid brother men, different paths from the ball court to the life court, till he got caught up in this whole nautical thing. A peace to you, my brother. That was that. And this is too, when I think of my cousins that still live in Juarez, and my sister's husband, who's a Chinese immigrant from Juarez, they live out in Dallas, and he's a very successful engineer, but his family still lives in Juarez. And I think of that, you know, where I'm like, they're right there, and there's this whole different, like, parallel universe occurring of an atmosphere of what's allowed to happen here as opposed to what's allowed to happen over here. And I can only imagine the internal composition of all that, you know. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's called Narcopreneurs. Juarez bleeds, filling the thirsty river with the blood of sinners, dumped onto the desert, left to the vultures, the ravenous dogs of the blazing heat. Narcopreneurs, turning the corridos, the cocaine romances, the women conquest, battles on the streets for the Yayo territory, wrong-look bar fights, wild pack hyenas taking down the solitary lions. And the songs morph into everyday truth, risking the lives of the neighbors and families, and all I can do is pray, oh great creator, gran creador, Juarez needs the salvation, their souls need to be sown into the life of the rest of the grid, this beautiful city where there live young hearts, hoping to claim the new folklore of their own making, their own meaning. It seeps and it creeps into the cracks of the buildings with peach parapets covered with broken glass bottles, protection from los malandros, the thugs, the old and young citizens of Juarez, walking alongside the birds and searching for the twigs, the sticks, the dirt, the rock, the water, the food, everyone on the hunt. I'm going to do about maybe 2 more pieces, because is that okay? Sure. Yeah, because this one here, I got the inspiration from going to, I got a gig with this guy, Jerry Quickly, you know, who's, you know, from Brooklyn, African-American brother. You know, he became a good friend of mine for a bit, and he, the filmmaker, you know, he did some day trading in Manhattan, and he goes to Stanford to go teach literature at Stanford. He didn't have a high school education. He was just a very brilliant guy. And he bought himself a plane, and he taught himself how to fly, and he got a job. And you see how good he was as to how to transition Air Force pilots into 747. It was a commercial flight pilots. So he was like showing them the segues of the engineering and whatever, right? And so he convinced, very charismatic, he was a very magical man, you know, and he got these guys to, they would ask him, what do we invest in? The stock market right now, you know, invest into movies. So he convinced him to do a movie about Civil War vampires. And I don't know about you, but that's what I was waiting for. Yeah. I can rest in peace now. But no, you know, the story was, it sounds absurd, but his script was really clever, and like a play on race relations with the black and the whites in America. They were very smart, very brilliant, you know, but covered by this ridiculous kind of thing. And he hired me to help him do the final edit on the film, because he had gone through 4 editors, and the movie was bad. But it was just bad because it was just bad. You could have brought Martin Scorsese, and it would not have been that, you know, that much better. And so I got the fortune and misfortune of getting hired to do it, just because I learned lessons from some players in New York when I was there for 4 months in Chelsea. You know, I was right down Chelsea Hotel was 2 blocks away. You know, I was doing some editing for Magnolia, all this thing, right? Getting paid good money for about 2.5 months. And but it was a nightmare. It was an entire nightmare. Every day was just seeing a bad movie, and you can't help it, you know? You can't, you know, just being the hand to move, like I felt like a factory, you know, like, and then I was going to play ball with TJ English and all his HBO buddies to try to do a TV series about Juarez and El Paso. And it was just bad, but prior to that, we had met up in his place in La Brea, in the foothills of Hollywood Hills, and Ernesto went there. He knows who he is. This guy's got an original Jean-Michel Basquiat that was owed to him by Basquiat when he gave him $20,000 and he got famous and he gave him a painting, right? And we go there and we're going to this place called the One World Stage in South Central LA off of Crenshaw Boulevard. And he invites me out. He's all like, man, I just gotta get rid of this stress. I got this fucking shitty movie I gotta present tomorrow. Getting calls from all these people and some things we're gonna go over, and he's, you know, just nervous because he knows he's got not a very good product in his hand. And he's like, I gotta go read poetry. I gotta go take a workshop and do something. You wanna go with me? I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we go out to One World Stage, and I was it was about the same crowd, 10 more people. But I was the only one that wasn't black there. And the magnificent looking guys, humongous, you know, this guy Razul had one dread that just came down. And he had, you know, he had blue eyes, and he was a big guy, and then his father had yellowish hair, and like just a different breed altogether. Wow, this is awesome, right? And they're looking at each other, and they get up there to present, they're doing their thing. Phenomenal performers, some of the best I've ever seen. And I'm watching this, but they had a hat that they put their name into to perform for the presentation. And I luckily had to put my name in the hat. But it's about to close, and next on stage is Valentin Sandoval. And she starts clapping. And I'm like, what? You know, like, so I walk on stage. And I tell them, I said, look guys, I don't commit my material to memory. I'm not one of those guys that has it down, I rehearse it, I present it, and I got my game, and I can go on Death Poetry Jam. Or, you know, that's not my desire and my intentions, you know. I don't have anything, I didn't bring anything. I don't have my laptop, I don't have nothing. What am I going to do? I'm telling them this, you know, and they're like, hey, yo man, you're on stage, just do something, you know. I'm like, I said, all right. And I tell them the story. I literally blanked out. I cannot tell you what I told them the first 3 minutes, what I was saying. I don't know. But I just know that they were cracking up, laughing on top of it. And they weren't laughing at me, all right? It's clear. They were, at that point, they were just, afterwards, the 2 or 3 guys just came up and like, oh man, that was phenomenal. That was really, really cool. Wow. You know, they invited me out to another place in South and Crenshaw and this and that. But I'm like, no, I'm here to work movie, man. I'm not here to I appreciate it, like, get the contact. But this is what I took from that. It was sort of a revival of innocence, you know, connection